Well, good afternoon and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I am Andy Shain, Managing Editor of Post and Courier Columbia. We have 13 journalists here based in Columbia for the state's largest newspaper. And we're here with two of them today who are going to talk about upcoming elections here in Columbia. First off, coming on Tuesday, we have a special election in Richland 1 for an at-large seat. And then a week later, we have city elections for a mayor and 3 council seats. They're all open. So that means we're going to have a big makeover on the governing body over South Carolina's second largest city. To help us analyze these races and give us some insight are Stephen Fastenaue, who covers City Hall for the Post and Courier Columbia, and Adam Benson, our education reporter here for the Post and Courier Columbia. They're at our office at Hardin and Gervais Streets, just in the Waverly neighborhood, just north of 5 Points. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today.
It's great to do it.
Well, very good. Well, and of course the joke may be that I'm your boss and you're here to do it anyway, but there we go. But I'm sure everybody appreciates you being here and sharing what you're going to share with us today. And before I begin, I want to let you know that if our email addresses, our Twitter handles are going to be in that chat box over to the right of your Zoom. So if you want to be able to reach out to us or follow us on social media, you can do that. And also during this event, you can send us questions at Q&A box that's at the bottom. Just go ahead and hit us with a question. We'll save some time at the end if we get some questions to answer those from those of you who are participating today. And again, we appreciate you being here. So let's go ahead and start off with Stephen Fastenaue, who's, as I said, who's been covering City Hall for us and covering the city elections. Stephen, of course, the race that probably is getting a lot of attention is the mayor's race because Steve Benjamin has decided not to seek a 4th term. That's obviously opening up a pretty wide field. So obviously everyone wants to know who's going to be the mayor, and give us a sense of what's happening in the race at this point.
Sure. Well, I'll leave it for maybe smarter people than me to predict what's going to happen here. Because my sense is, things are looking pretty tight. But if I had to, I guess at this point, Tamika Isaac-Devine seems like maybe a front runner, and Sam Johnson and Dana Rickman kind of close behind. One thing I think seems certain is that there will be a runoff. I don't see any of these candidates getting 50% of the vote. I'm sorry, we got a little feedback going on in the background. But a lot's happened in this race, especially the last couple of months. Sam Johnson got a huge endorsement, and Mayor Benjamin backed his campaign last month. He already had endorsements from 2 other council members, Sam Davis and Ed McDowell. And then earlier this month, Devine announced an endorsement from Jim Clyburn, which was a big deal, a lot of fanfare. So it's going to be interesting to see how these last few weeks play out, if there are any surprises. We'll see what happens.
I'm sorry about the feedback issue with this today. We're gonna sort of maybe see if we can handle on that. Stephen, I guess the idea really with 4 mayor candidates running for office at this point, do we have a sense that we're probably going to be heading to a runoff?
Yeah, I think so. I just think these, especially the top 3 guys combined, Dana Rickman and Sam Johnson, are all well-funded, entrenched campaigns. Daniel and Tamika obviously have been on council a long time. We have a lot of name recognition. I just don't see any of them having separated themselves enough at this point to get 50% outright. We'll see. Andy, you're on mute.
And to handle some of that feedback issue, I went on mute, so apologize. Sorry, apologize about that. Always technical issues with these things, and everybody, thank you for being patient with us on this. Long story short, what are some of the issues? What are some of the things that are going to separate the candidates at this point? I know we talk a lot about the issues being public safety, taxes, but what is it that you think that's going to sit here if that may differentiate the candidates and maybe give one of them an edge come November 2nd?
Sure. I guess it comes down to what voters want as far as um, experience versus fresh ideas. With Divine and Rickman have been on council for so long, if you like the things they've done and you like the direction the city's going, um, one of those candidates is probably going to be your choice. If you feel like there needs to be a shot of energy, some new ideas, some new eyeballs on how to look at things, Johnson seems to be that candidate. He's much younger than the other two candidates. He's got, um, he does have the backing of the mayor and experience in the mayor's office, but this will be his first elected office. So that's one thing that obviously I think separates them. And then if you're looking between Devine and Rickman, um, this is a nonpartisan race, but it seems there's kind of that progressive versus conservative uh, platform there with Rickman being um, really banging public safety hard. The city's tax structure, and Devine is looking to do things like create an office of inclusion, diversity and inclusion for the city, and to look at everything through, as she says, a lens of equity and some of these underserved communities.
Do you think in the end that this is going to come down to a matter of again, it is a nonpartisan it's a nonpartisan race, so we're not running as Republicans and Democrats, but clearly there are some of those lines being drawn. Typically think of Columbia as being a Democratic city. Does that seem to favor some of the folks who lean Democratic, or is there or really some of the money issues may force that maybe towards a Daniel Rickman or a Mo Badura?
Sure. If that's the case, I think again you would give the edge to Devine. If this is Atlanta Democratic and she has a lot of support among Democratic politicians, to include Jim Clyburn. So that would seem to point to her. But you're right. Rickman has spent a lot of money. He's got TV ads up. I believe he's the only candidate with TV ads. His signs are everywhere. There's a lot of exposure. Um, so yeah, I mean, you might know better than I do. I haven't been in this community for so long how it might lean, but that's kind of my sense at this point.
Well, and you talked about the endorsement, the Clyburn endorsement that Tamika Isaac Devine has received, but Sam Johnson got the endorsement from Steve Benjamin, who again has won 3 elections. Is how do you think that they'll play a little bit of a role in this, that people will see who the obviously the congressman wants, who the mayor wants?
Sure, no, I think that's important, maybe especially in the districts that Sam Davis and Ed McDowell represent. He's got those endorsements from District 1 and 2. So when you look at those communities, if they're looking to their elected leaders for guidance on this election, then maybe maybe that does work in Sam's favor. And obviously Benjamin has been a popular mayor. He hasn't really had too much opposition in the more than 10 years he's been in office now. So that's certainly, I think, a big deal. I guess we'll see at the polls how much those endorsements actually play in. Rickman has joked that he doesn't have anybody's support on council. He's kind of just out there on his own because everybody's chosen sides, and none of them broke for Daniel. So he's kind of out there on an island. But I guess that'll be the determining factor. If he's elected, we'll find out how much these endorsements matter.
No, it's certainly it's interesting. And the other thing too is, what's been a tenor of this race? Has it been positive? Has it been negative? How would you describe to folks sort of how the candidates have been interacting with each other?
Sure, I think for the most part, at least publicly, everybody's tried to just focus on the issues and not attack mode. I think it's changed a little bit as we've gotten closer to the election. We hear a little bit behind the scenes. There's some posturing. Campaigns are shopping around stories on other campaigns that they feel might, potentially help their effort or be damaging to another effort. But publicly, really, there's haven't been a lot of barbs thrown. I think probably Mo Badura has been the strongest in criticizing, some things that Recommend and Divine have done on council, or votes they have or have not taken. Just for instance, he's really, I think, several instances mentioned the situation at Allen Benedict Court, how he feels that there's been no accountability for the two people who died there. So he's really been much more, I guess you could say, on the attack than, on others publicly.
Right. But the other ones, but the other three, even the idea that recommend is looking at things very differently than maybe Divine or Johnson. That they're really, it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of
Sure.
tension, at least outward tension during events.
Right, and part of that, I think, Tamika and Daniel have worked together for so long on council. They have a little bit of kinship there. Not to say they don't have differences, of course, but I don't think they've kind of seem to have an agreement not to publicly attack each other. I think there might be some heartburn over, having Johnson, who's kind of so new and fresh to all this, who said, he has the most experience in the mayor's office by virtue of the 6 years that he spent in Benjamin's office. There might be some heartburn from the other candidates about his lack of experience, but again, that's not something that's really been harped on publicly.
So let's go ahead and switch to another, probably the other popular race in this campaign for Columbia City Hall, which is the at-large race, the seat that Tamika Isaac Devine held and has decided not to run for re-election since she's deciding to go for mayor. It attracted 7 candidates. Why is this seat so popular?
Well, I think number one, and it's obvious, is there's no incumbent, right? If Devine was running again, having held that seat since 2002, there would not be 6 people running against her. It's wide open. This is a chance for people who maybe have considered a run for public office. This is their best shot. You got a wide open race with no entrenched name in there. Another thing I think has played into this is kind of the unrest last year, the protests surrounding the killing of George Floyd. There's been a lot of social justice issues that have come up in the city over the last year, a lot of political engagement. I think that's fueled at least a couple of these candidates to get involved. And then you have the pandemic, which if there are people out there that feel this could be handled better, or there are issues, underlying issues in the community that have been revealed because of this pandemic, that has spurred some people.
Talk a little bit about who's in this race. If you sort of had to, someone came up to you and said, summarize a little bit about who the people are in this race. What kind of mix of folks do we have, and how are they differentiating themselves?
Sure. So it's a mix, a broad spectrum of professions. We've got 31 years old to 81 years old. And there's Oddity Bustles, who is a public health researcher and has said, the pandemic has kind of spurred her to get involved, but she has a lot of support in the business community as well, and has really talked about kind of having a data-driven approach to her decision-making process. Tyler Bailey, who's kind of a well-known attorney, but is involved in a lot of different things, but is also seeking his first elected office. Deetra Matthews, who is doing well with endorsements and raising money, and she has a master's in public administration. She is an environmental lobbyist and works conservation efforts. Heather Bauer, who ran for the South Carolina House in the Democratic primary. She has support from a couple of well-known names, Howard Duvall on council and Allison Terratio on county council. She's done this before, so I think she feels like she has some experience in campaigns. And then I guess another name that's kind of obvious is John Kringle, who's kind of been in the spotlight maybe for a lot of years with his different, the different movements he's been involved in or causes. So it's definitely an eclectic mix of people.
Yeah, for sure, right, for sure. And what are the and again, what are some of the issues? Are there anything that they are particularly differentiating themselves about, or are there sort of similar themes in what they're presenting?
Um, I think they might differentiate themselves based on just the cohesiveness of their message, how they're being able to stay on point. It's clear to me they're maybe about half the field has policy points. They know their talking points. They know the reasons um, they're in the race, and then there's a few others who might seem to be more of an afterthought. They wanted to run for the experience. This is a chance to get some ideas out there, but they're not don't seem to be banging the drum as loudly or as publicly as others. But no, I don't know if there's if there are any issues in this race particularly that stand out to me. Just in general, when you're talking to the candidates, it's they want to put an emphasis on infrastructure, roads and sewer, um, clean drinking water, public safety. It's sort of the things you might expect to hear.
And again, I think that race has also been kind of clean as well. I mean, we're not hearing a lot of mudslinging. I'm the mailings I'm getting at home or the calls I'm getting at home don't seem to be pointing really fingers at each other, more just supporting themselves. Finally, the last race that is competitive in Columbia, we do have one other race for District 4 where Joe Taylor, the former Commerce Secretary, is running unopposed, and that's Daniel Rickman's old seat. Again, Rickman's given up his seat to run for mayor, just like Tamika did for her at-large seat. But the final seat that's available is in District 1 in North Columbia. Talk a little bit about what's happening there, and again, why that seat is open and who's running for that race.
Sure. So this is interesting. Sam Davis said early in the year he's stepping down. He's been in that seat representing North Columbia since 1998. He was only the second representative in that seat since Columbia went to single-member districts in '83 when Luther Batiste was elected. So this will only be the third representative in almost 40 years for North Columbia. So in that sense, it's pretty important for the people who live in those communities. But as far as how the field is shaped out, Tina Herbert is an attorney. She has the endorsement of Davis. She's a friend of Benjamin's. She worked in City Hall as a director of business opportunities. She's raised and spent a lot more money than her opponent, who's Krista Williams, who is a officer with the Department of Corrections. She runs a nonprofit that's focused on encouraging people to vote, especially in rural, underserved areas. And it might seem like Herbert has the clear edge here, but I think I've kind of been surprised or impressed with how much Williams has been involved in this race. She's going door to door. She's talking to residents. Seems to be talking to residents all the time. She has a clear set of issues and concerns that she's built from talking to these residents. And I think, whether or not she's able to challenge Herbert for this seat, that her engagement and her ideas might carry over to some of the policy decisions that are made, regardless of whether she's on council.
Okay. Well, great. Hey, before we switch over to the Richland 1 race, just a reminder that if you have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the Q&A queue down at the bottom of your Zoom. We'd be happy to answer any questions at the end of this. But let's go ahead and switch over from City Hall to the school board, where, as I said, next week we have a special election in Richland 1. Adam Benson's been covering that. And Adam, I guess start us off with just how did we get here? Why is this seat open? So to remind people about that, and then talk a little bit about who's running.
Yeah, I think this actually came as a surprise to some folks. Yolanda Anderson, who was first elected 2 years ago, announced rather abruptly that in early August that her family obligations were taking her out of the district and she was resigning effective immediately. So that quickly opened up her seat. And we drew a field rather quickly of, originally it was 5, and then one of the candidates, Kim La, dropped out pretty quickly. So it's been a 4-person race until this week, when Leslie Harville, who's a longtime attorney, said that her professional obligations were taking her out of the country. So she throws her support behind Robert Lamanak, who's he runs an education nonprofit here in town. There's also Hamilton Jacobs, who's a young father and a realtor. And then probably the name that most people who follow Richland County, Columbia politics are familiar with is Jim Manning, who obviously was a veteran Richland County Council member. So those are your candidates on the ballot.
What kind of issues are they facing? You know, when they get on council, what are some of the things they're going to have to be contending with?
Yeah, so they're going to have to dive into the deep end pretty fast. Of course, COVID is the ever-present challenge for the district. There's $78 million coming to Richland 1 in the latest round of COVID relief aid from the federal government that the board needs to decide what to use it on. So that's going to be coming up pretty quickly, and it's probably going to be a conversation that the new board member is going to be involved in from day one. Of course, like other districts, Richland 1 fell far behind on assessments last year on math and English language arts, given to students in grades 3 through 8, given the pandemic, of course. And so, you know, there is a lot of talk about how the achievement gap can be closed for students, how, you know, what support systems the board can help put in place to bring in new interventionists, new teachers, you know, wraparound programs to support these students. You know, it's a 22,000 student district. It's the 9th largest in South Carolina. There's of course also a mask mandate in place in the district that may or may not become a political hot potato depending on what happens. So these are all sort of in the ether for whoever steps into that seat.
Is there been any endorsements in this race? Is there anybody who's sort of maybe having a little bit of an edge, you think, at this point?
I mean, like I said, just by name recognition, I would say, you know, Jim Manning is a known commodity, but Robert Lamanak has gotten a lot of, I mean, he's been out there a lot. He has mailers out. He just got the support of Leslie Harville. You know, so it's hard to say at this point. I mean, you know, it's on the issues, all of the candidates sort of have similar things to say. There's not really an issue du jour that is going to really differentiate them. So I think it's really going to be a matter of, you know, personalities and, you know, leadership style that's going to decide. This is an at-large seat, by the way, so it's open to everyone in the district to vote on. So, you know, you have to really have a broad tent as you go around and campaign, because lower Richland County is much different than the urban parts, obviously. So as far as a favorite, I wouldn't venture to guess, but I think that all the candidates have definitely gotten their names out there pretty aggressively.
Has anyone from the current school board endorsed any of the folks running?
No, they've been pretty quiet. I think, you know, they kind of want to let the political process play out. I don't think that they want to create a situation where the new commissioner is going to be dealing with a board where members sort of have endorsed a rival. You know, I think they want to sort of keep things harmonious and let that new commissioner, you know, serve as the voters decide.
Right now, the sort of the state of that board. I mean, you know, you cover some other boards in the Columbia area where there's pretty much lines drawn between certain groups on there. What is the sort of the state of what is the state of relationships on the Richland 1 board at this point?
Yeah, I think that the board, by and large, works well together. There's a couple of issues that do sort of separate board members from one another. For example, the Richland superintendent Craig Witherspoon just had his evaluation, which was glowing, except it was a near unanimous vote, except for Beatrice King, who voted to not give him a vote of confidence. So, spending issues, I will say, fiscal accountability is always big. There's a lot of folks in Richland One who are interested in knowing how their tax dollars are being spent, which projects are going to be on the horizon, capital improvement projects. Of course, there's still a lot of parents out there who are fretting over the mask mandate that's still in place. And so, that's something, and the board's been pretty unanimous, actually unanimous, I shouldn't say pretty unanimous, on the fact that that's something that is worth the potential financial and political hit to keep in place. But this is a board that spends a lot of time. They're a very wonkish board. If you watch a meeting, you might spend 45 minutes hearing about why there's a new HVAC system going into a school and who that contractor might be. So I will say the new board member is going to have to do his or her homework on this, because this is not a board that really votes on things without vetting whatever the particular agenda item is.
And at the same time, also, it's a reminder that this seat is only good for a year. Essentially, you're going to have to run for re-election next year because it's completing a term that was abandoned midterm.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Point.
Yes. And I should say one more thing, since we're talking about that. Leslie Harville, who withdrew last week, her name will still be on the ballot. And so just something for voters to sort of keep in mind. Her name, it appears, is withdrawn on, if you go to the state elections website, her name appears as withdrawn, but her name will still be on the ballot on next week. So just something for folks to keep in mind. Whether or not that's going to influence who gets the majority and whether there'll be a runoff, who knows, but just something for folks to keep in mind.
All right. Well, we do have a question actually about the school board race in our Q&A, and Jory, thank you for the question. Jory wants to know a little bit more about the platforms of the candidates. And there's a lot of generalities going on there, but is there anything in specific that these candidates are really running on and saying that really needs to be addressed and something that they would tackle if they were elected?
Yeah, I will say almost to a person, all of the commissioner, the candidates have said that they are very much looking for ways to recruit and keep qualified teachers in the classrooms across all grade levels. They also want to invest in professional development programs, such as more workforce pipelines for students. Those are really big for all of the candidates. As far as differences go, there's not really many, I would say. Of course, you're going to find nuances as you go along, but all of the candidates have really sort of ran on the same platform. They all understand the issues that are going on: teacher recruitment needs, achievement gaps. And so really the differences come in how they maybe want to attack those, really. It's not like we're not really seeing the same thing we're seeing over the city council or the mayoral race in terms of wedge issues, if such exist.
All right. Well, that sounds good. And Jory and everyone else who's listening now and who may get this later when it's on YouTube or it's emailed to you, a recording of this, is that we do have an election guide, election preview that we did actually put online in the past couple of days. It's also in copies of the Post and Courier Columbia, the printed editions you can get at 500 locations across the Columbia area. That does include what the candidates have to say on various issues in both the city races, the mayor's races, the council races, as well as the Richland One special election. So please take a look for that. If you actually go onto my Twitter feed, I have links to the main stories that get you to all of the individual previews of the races. If you get to those stories and kind of spider your way through those really easily, just click through. We put links to all of that in those stories. So if you want to, it's easy to get to. I want to thank Stephen and Adam for joining us today and sharing their insight on all of this. I want to thank you for obviously coming out and watching this today, participating with us today, and for reading the Post and Courier. Couple things just always like to note is that in addition, as I said, a copy of this video will be sent to anyone who RSVP'd to this event. It will also be on our YouTube page in a day or so, the Post and Courier's YouTube page. And I always like to sit here and remind folks that you can subscribe to our newsletters. They're free. We've got plenty of them here in Columbia. We've got about 4 or 5 of them that you can do, from news to business to what's happening on the weekends. But we also have a number of other newsletters that the Post and Courier puts out on climate, on military, on health, and on a whole number of issues. So please take a look at those. And also you can subscribe to the Post and Courier. It's the way to support what we do. And what you can just do is go to postandcourier.com/Columbia. You'll find on top links to getting the newsletters, as well as a link to subscribe to the paper. So again, thank you for being here today. Thank you for everyone. And obviously, good luck at the polls come the next couple of Tuesdays. Good day.